There we go. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
How
Hi.
y'all doing today?
Hi.
I'm Penny.
Really good to see everybody. So yeah, after this, we have one more family after today, and then probably like a party at the end. Plant party. So it's really good to see everybody. I have not, in case people are wondering, I have not yet put up the video from last week. I have some editing to do first on that one, but I will try to get both last week's and this week's up this week. Assuming that I don't do anything silly this particular meeting, then it should be no problem to get them both up. Otherwise, I'd have to give myself double the editing. So here we go. Are y'all ready? Yeah? Excellent. Oh, one more thing before I forget. In the chat, if you wouldn't mind, could y'all write where you're calling in from and what your favorite summer produce is to eat? Just out of curiosity. I give people a couple of minutes to do that. It's really good to have everybody. So have people been able to enjoy like seeing more plants out when they're nature journaling? Yeah? Cool. Very cool. Let's see here. We got some strawberries. We've got some blueberries and apricots, peaches. Oh yeah, peaches are awesome. Tomatoes, strawberries and plums, papaya with lime. I'm seeing all of the good fruits and veggies. I'm looking forward to them. I see one included that we're going to be having today in our class. So this is going to be awesome. Melons and huckleberries. Actually, I take it back. All of these are technically fruits. I sometimes call tomato vegetable because of the savory taste, but it's really a fruit because of the seeds and everything. Actually, that reminds me of a really, really good quote that I love. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And with that, I think we'll start. Let's see here. I will share my screen. Here we go. And present. Okay, here we go. Welcome back. Welcome to week number 7 of Plant Families in Our Foods and Nature Journaling. I'm really excited to have you all here. Originally, this was going to be the last class, but like I said, we have one more plant family to go through after this. And then we have in a couple of weeks, sort of like an end party where we celebrate all the families. But anyways, welcome to week 7. As usual, we'll start out with our 3 pictures. We'll start out by drawing what we have here. You can take 2 minutes, and I will set the timer. And after our 2 minutes, then we can have another minute for our words and our numbers, adding those to our pictures. And again, don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just draw whatever you can, and we'll start now. Take a few more seconds. Okay, that's our 2 minutes. And now let's take an additional minute to add any observations, any describing words, questions, and numbers to our picture. Take a few more seconds. And there's our minute. Okay, let us move on to our second one. Once again, we'll take our 2 minutes to draw whatever we can. Take a few more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. And now we'll take 1 more minute to add any words and numbers to our picture. Take a few more seconds. And there's our minute. We did just do words and numbers to our pictures, yeah? It was Okay. Here comes number 3. Here we go. Let's take a few more seconds. There we go. That's our 2 minutes. And then we'll take our 1 more minute for our words and numbers on our picture. Okay, take a few more seconds. And there's our minute. Now, before I introduce our family of today, I'm just going to go back to the first slide and give anybody who came late a chance to take a screenshot. Okay, here we go, if I can do it. Okay, here's our first slide. So folks can take a screenshot if they need. Hopefully, all good? Okay. And we will go on now to introduce our family. Now, I apologize in advance. This family is about 2 months earlier than I would have liked to have presented it, but we do what we do, so here we go. Welcome to our family of the day, the Nightshade family. Now, I'm sure most of us, that's partially why I asked about summer fruits and veggies, is because, as you know, with tomatoes, a lot of them prefer the summertime. I think that part of that's because a lot of the distribution of the Nightshade family is in the tropics. Not all, but that's where the greatest diversity of this family is in the tropics. So our official name for this family is the Solanaceae. Now that's probably going to sound a little strange. I mean, Nightshade, but then Solanaceae, like the sun. They seem kind of like opposites. I kind of thought that was hilarious though. But it is named for the genus Solanum. There's a lot of different plants in there that we know, including potatoes and tomatoes. And there's a couple of different possibilities of where that name comes from. I personally thought of it originally as sol for sun because of the shape of the flowers. Look like little miniature suns to me. But it turns out there's also a Latin word solare, which think of solace or soothing, and it relates to the psychoactive properties of some of the members of this plant, of this family. Some of them are used in medicine, and I guess soothing would be one word for them, but some of them do some other kind of crazy things. So don't necessarily take this as a good thing about this family, at least where human health is concerned. A lot of this family is quite poisonous. So always be cautious of this one. Oh yeah, and then to name the ones that we've already seen, we have, does anybody know what this one here is? Anybody recognize it?
That's a tomato plant.
It is, yep. I believe specifically a cherry tomato, but yep, it is. It's a tomato plant. One of my favorite flowers because of how cool they look. Does anybody know this one?
That a mallow?
What now?
A mallow, like as in marshmallow?
Oh,
Plant?
not a mallow, although they do have really similar fused flowers. That's true. Now this one is one of my all-time favorites in terms of the poisonous ones, and y'all know how I love poisonous ones. This is Angel's Trumpet, also known as Reina de la Noche, or Queen of the Night, and also known as Brugmansia. And this one has a hauntingly beautiful smell if you stand under it at nighttime. It emits the fragrance most powerfully at night, although you can still faintly smell it during the day. It also will really, really, really mess you up if you ever try to eat any of it. So I recommend not ever eating any of it. It has really, really bad effects on people. Some people have tried it for psychedelic trips and it doesn't go the way they like. And then this one, does anybody know this one? It's an ornamental, I'll give a hint.
Is it morning glory? Is it morning glory?
Morning glory? Oh, it's interesting you should mention the morning glory. It's not a morning glory, but those two families are often mistaken for each other because they have very, very similar flowers. So it's great that you mentioned that one. This one is called a blue potato bush of all the weird names. But well, I'm excited. You're going to see a morning glory at some point during our lesson today. So that makes me really happy that you mentioned it. And then this one here, I'm not sure, but I think this one is called Blue Witch Nightshade. Not the same as the deadly nightshade, that's a Tropa belladonna, and this is a solanum, but they're both in the same family and you shouldn't eat either of them. So here's our anatomy of our flower. So with our usual flower, with our basic flower diagram, we have our stem, then we have our sepals, which are the little green bits that are underneath all of the rest. Some people think they look a bit like little leaves. Then we have our lovely petals, and then we have our stamens that make the pollen and our pistils that make the seeds. And I remember that, I know I've said before, but I'll say again, I remember that as PSSP. So the pistils make the seeds and the stamens make the pollen. PSSP. And then I guess you have PS over here as well. So yeah. And in our particular family today, we have, well, we're going to go into more about pistil anatomy today because I realize I've been remiss on this, but we have one pistil. It happens to have a 2-chambered ovary inside. We have usually 5 stamens. Sometimes, like you saw for the tomato, they can be united into kind of like a cone-looking thing around the pistil. We have 5 united petals. Sometimes they look like the tomato where they're just like only slightly overlapping, but they still look like independent petals. And other times they become big tubes like the angel's trumpet. And we have 5 united sepals. Another thing about the pistil that's kind of interesting is a lot of the times they have this one little head, this one little ball. They call that capitate, like a head. So that can be another thing that will kind of make it stand out.
I have a question. Are there always the same number of sepals as there are petals?
Oh, you mean like in most plant families?
I mean, in all plant families, yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not actually sure, because I know that sometimes there'll be these weird things with sepals. Sometimes you can think that they're, but then they get kind of overlapped, and sometimes they can look lobed, and then there'll be more petals. I want to say it's not always the case, but I don't know for absolute certain. But I know it tends to be a pattern with a lot of them. So it's often the case, but not always. Yeah. Oh, Judy, I saw that you'd had a question, but I couldn't. Could you tell me what your question was?
Oh, hi. If you could say what PSSP again is.
Oh yeah, totally. Sorry. Yeah. So PSSP. So I think of it as being pistils make seeds. So P for pistil and S for seed, and then stamens make pollen. So S for stamen, then P for pollen. So PSSP. I just think it's funny that the letters, that they all have those same letters, P and S.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah. Okay. So I've realized that I've been a bit remiss in going over the pistil. Because I use words sometimes that seem like, I bet, they're kind of confusing. And I think Jasmine brought this to my attention last time, which I greatly appreciate. So a pistil breaks down into 3 parts or more, I guess, because you count the ovules as 4. But a lot of times when we say pistil, we're thinking of, I picture the pistil as being kind of like a vase, although sometimes they'll have different shapes. But if you picture it like a vase, then here at the bottom of the vase, this is where the ovary is, where all of the seeds get made. And so we call these ovules before they become seeds. The style is considered like the neck of the vase almost. And the reason why this can be significant is because sometimes you'll see a plant that maybe it has one ovary, but it might have more than one style. So then that becomes significant. And so you can see different combinations of things. And then the stigma is the top bit here. A lot of times it can be sticky, sometimes a different color than the rest, not always, but it's where the pollen gets received in the plant. And this can be kind of different too. And so I wanted to mention this about that. So this is significant because we have a pistil, but we say that the ovary has 2 chambers in our family today. So there would be a divider in here. And so that winds up being important. And then I wanted to mention the position of ovaries, because I know that that's something I should have gone over before too. So sometimes you'll hear botanists talk about superior and inferior ovaries. Now, I feel kind of badly for the plants because, that makes them feel like we don't want to give plants bad self-esteem or anything like that. But luckily, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the position of the ovary in relation to the rest of the parts, the sepals, the petals, and the stamens. So in this case, this is a superior ovary because this bit here is on top of everything else. So we call that hypogynous. And you can think of that as meaning hypo, meaning underneath, and then gyne, meaning the female part of the plant. So think like gynecologist. So this means that all of the other parts are underneath the ovary, as you can see. This also counts as a superior ovary, even though it looks like it should be a halfway. And in this case, in our first class about roses, we talked about a hypanthium being sort of like a cup. This is the example of what a hypanthium is. And these are kind of on the outside of the hypanthium, the sepals, the petals, and the stamens here. And so this is still a superior ovary, even though it doesn't quite look like it should be, but that's because it hasn't completely closed over it, sort of like an open cup. We call this perigynous, meaning around the female parts or around the ovary. And for some reason, this is still counted as a superior ovary. I would think it's be like a halfway one, but no, it's a superior one. And then this is an inferior ovary. And we have I honestly think that these are awesome plants, so hopefully nobody is mean to the plants because this is the inferior ovary. But this means that everything else attaches above the ovary. And so we call this epigynous, which is where everything else is on top of the female parts. Think like epilogue which is the on top of the story at the end. So that's just a little bit more about the pistil and the ovary. Any questions so far? No? Okay. And we shall go on now to our key characteristics of Solanaceae. I know this is a lot of information. You don't have to write all of it down, just the bits that make the sense. So as we talked about, well, we have 5 united sepals. Sometimes they're a little bit more individual looking than other times. In this case, they're not. They look more like, 5 lobes. And so when we have sepals together, we often call it the calyx, but calyx is just pretty much a word for sepals, plural. It's the same thing as just saying sepals. We have our 5 united petals, or our corolla for plural petals. And the thing about this particular family that's a little frustrating is that it's extremely diverse. And those are really, really loud motorcyclists out there. Sorry, they're having a party. So these have a lot of variety, these petals. Sometimes they can be star-like, the way that you saw with the tomato. Other times they're kind of in between star and tube, like this one. I don't know what you would call this shape. That'd be a fun reminds me of, though. And then sometimes they can form a really long tube, sort of like what you saw for the angel's trumpet. Let's see here. And sorry, I was looking at the questions. And and so we usually have our 5 stamens, though not always. I've been told that there are some that are like in multiples of 4 or even 8, but I've never really seen them myself. I've only ever seen them in patterns of 5. And they're not always united, but in this case they are. So even though it can be hard to tell, these are actually 5 stamens together. They just kind of unite into almost a cone shape that goes around the pistil here. And the pistil will sometimes have an enlarged round tip, or at least enlarged in comparison to the rest of the plant. So that's the stigma right there. Then we have our style leading deeper. And then we have our ovaries with the 2 chambers. And because the sepals kind of come from this point but flare out, this would count as a superior ovary, even though it looks a bit strange. If it were an inferior one, then the ovary would be somewhere over here instead. So this is a superior ovary. The leaves aren't always fuzzy, but they often are. So that will be something that you might notice. And also too, with certain members of this family, even if the fruits are edible, the leaves aren't. So a lot of times you do not want to eat the leaves. Also, if you touch them too much, some of them will have photosensitivities as well. So if you've ever played with tomatoes and you've gotten the green stuff all over your hands, the greenish powder, sometimes that can cause a rash too, very similar to what we were talking about last week with the Apiaceae. So you want to be careful and wear gloves when you're handling them. And as I mentioned before, a lot of members of this family are very poisonous. There are lots of alkaloids in this family. So be cautious to never eat the family or any member of this family unless you know exactly what you're eating. And like I said, even if you're eating something like a tomato fruit, don't eat the leaves. The leaves will often be very different. And like always, let the plant that's in front of you tell you. So if any of these patterns don't fit, trust the plant. And we'll have one more look inside. This is from that blue potato bush from earlier. In this one, you can see, I think that's one stamen, 2, 3, and 4, although they have this weird thing where you can see that they're kind of bunched up together. And there was a 5th one over here, but like I cut that part off. And you can't really see the 2 chambers, but you can see where the ovary is here. So because all of these connect down here, then this is still a superior ovary. I'm wondering if this might count as being paragynous. And you can see up here our style, and then right here, our bright green stamen right in the middle. In a lot of the families, in a lot of the plants, the stamen will be a bit sticky, so they can hold on to the pollen. And in this case, we have kind of a fused corolla. You can see that we have these long lines that go at the creases here. I almost think of them as looking like petals that suddenly got all glued together. That's what they make me think of. And yeah, the stamens in this case, they don't look as united as they did with the tomatoes. They don't look like they're like this really hard and fast cone, but they're definitely more together than in some of the others, like the angel's trumpet. So they look like they're trying to stack with each other. So I'm thinking this might be paragynous, though don't take my word for it. You might want to double check on that one. So
I don't know if you saw the question from the other Anne. Are some of the leaves poisonous to chickens? Do we know that?
Ooh, I didn't see that question. Thank you. That's a good question. I don't know if they're poisonous to chickens or not. I wish I knew. I'd say double check just in case. That's a good question. Does anybody want to, well, aside from the obvious one that we already talked about, does anybody want to guess what other foods we know that are in Solanaceae?
Eggplant? Oh, that's what E said too. Salt said it too. Oh boy, it's a popular one.
Yep.
Potato.
Potato, yep. And tomato. Any others?
Tomatillo?
Tomatillo, yeah. I don't know garden huckleberry. That's a good question. And yams, that's an interesting case. It turns out that yams, sweet potatoes, and regular potatoes, to my understanding, I think that they might all be in completely different families from each other, all three of them. It's weird. But yeah, although those three are in completely different families.
Bell pepper?
Yeah. Bell pepper, yes. Bell pepper. Those are some awesome guesses. And I'm pretty sure you guys got all of them on the list. So yeah, tomatoes, tomatillos, potatoes, eggplants, and all the peppers. But I wrote bell peppers and chili peppers just to like, but really all of the peppers. Not black pepper though, not that one. Yeah, everybody guessed all of them. That's pretty awesome. There's some other ones too, some ornamentals and some other ones that we consume even though we don't eat them, but you'll find that one out later. But for ornamentals, also petunias as well, in addition to the angel's trumpet. Also datura, which is sometimes called devil's trumpet or Jimson weed, that one as well. So are there any questions before we go into the most fun part of our day? Okay, garden huckleberries are nightshade. Cool, thank you. I didn't know that one before, so thank you, Sol. And I love your name. Your name is like perfect for today because this is the family. So thank you. I will definitely learn more about garden huckleberry. All right, are you all ready? It's time to play Spot the Solanaceae. Round one. Thank you, Anne. So now we get to guess which one is the Solanaceae. And you might recognize some of the others too. Remember, this is just for fun and practice, so don't worry about whether or not you get the answers right. It takes years to be able to identify the families. And so this is just practice, just the beginning of practicing. And it takes years of practice. So have fun with this, okay?
And remember, you can move the box that the poll is in. It's just a window, so you can minimize it or move it aside if you need to see your screen better.
Yay, I see almost everybody's done guessing. So I'll just give about 5 more seconds. And our answer that everybody got is the middle one. Did anybody already know that this was tobacco? So yeah, this is tobacco. Believe it or not, tobacco, nicotiana, is also a nightshade. It is also in the nightshade family. This particular one has this absolutely wonderful, sweet smelling flower. The leaves They smell pretty bad. And that's the part that you use. But the flowers have this really, really sweet, perfumey smell. There's some other tobaccos, and they don't have nearly the strong ones. Like there's these ones back here. I think these are Huichol tobacco, but I'm not sure. But these ones smell absolutely amazing. Does anybody happen to recognize what family this first one is in? Anybody?
Aster?
Yes. Yes, it is. You got it. This is an Asteraceae. I think that it might be, don't be fooled by the leaves over here. The leaves are something completely different, but yes, this is Asteraceae. Does anybody recognize what family this one is?
Rosaceae.
Yes, Rosaceae, specifically strawberries. That's what these leaves are, by the way. These are strawberry leaves. So yeah, strawberries. Very good. Everybody got this one. Okay, might get a little bit harder. Y'all ready for round 2? Here goes. I know it's a little bit more tricky, but don't worry about it. Like I said, just have fun with it. And if you see similarities and it's hard to tell them apart, that's good. That means you're noticing similarities in the plants. It's noticing the differences that is super, takes a long time. So don't worry. Okay, let's take another 10 seconds. Okay, are y'all ready? Here goes. And like I said, this one was a very difficult one, so it's completely understandable if this was challenging. So this is one of the nightshades. I believe it's green spot nightshade, but I'm not totally sure. But it's definitely a solanum of some kind. And I found this one out in the Presidio. Now, for those who guessed this one, what told you that this was the right one?
The tube for me in the center.
Like
with the stamen, yeah, that tube, and then
yep.
the stamen sticking out.
Yep, definitely. That's very, very solanaceous. Definitely.
But it was hard to decide.
Very hard, yeah. This one probably fooled a lot of people, right? Does anybody know what this one is?
Petunia.
Petunia? I believed, well, maybe it is a petunia, come to think of it, but I didn't think it was. Honestly, I thought that this one was one of the morning glories when I first saw it in the garden.
Oh.
So when someone said earlier that they reminded them of a morning glory, and I said that you have a point. This is an example of a morning glory, I believe. Now I'm worried. Okay, now I'm going to go double check this after this class. Thank you. I learned something today too. And this one over here is a borage. Similar looking with the middles, but quite different in some other regards, but that's a different family. So yeah, I believe that this is a morning glory, but now I'm second guessing myself. So thank you. Okay, ready for our final round?
What family is the borage or borage?
Sorry?
What family is the borage or borage?
I think it's in Boraginaceae, its own family.
Well, that's handy.
So here we go. Ready for round 3? Okay, here we go. And I agree, borage flowers taste delicious.
Oh.
Yeah, this one is very challenging. So let's take another 10 seconds or so. And don't worry, like I said, I know that these are difficult. And that's partially why I do it like this, where you have similar looking ones. It's because it just makes it easier in time, the more and more you practice. I know I definitely didn't get them right on my first, or probably even 50th time. It takes a long time to learn. And that's okay, that's part of the joy of it. Okay, are you all ready? Okay. Our answer is the third one, potato. That one's kind of difficult to see, especially because of how the flowers look, but if you peek inside, you can see those stamens united in sort of a similar shape as the first ones that we saw. And that one little pistil sticking out. So this is a potato, and that's mostly why I wanted to include it, is because it's one of our edibles. And also because usually we grow potatoes, we reproduce them by the little, I guess we'd call them, what do we call those? I don't know, but potato eyes, or like baby ones, the really tiny ones. We usually reproduce them by the tubers in the ground. So it's rare to really get the chance to look at the flowers, but equally fun. This one here, if I'm not mistaken, this is from the squash family. I believe this might be one of the maras, one of the native, not sure exactly what their common name is, but mara species, M-A-R-A-H, maybe manroot. And this one over here, I think might be a vinca, but I'm not sure. And it has these kind of windmill looking petals to them. That's very characteristic of a different family called Asteraceae. But yeah, this is our potato family. I know that one was a bit more difficult. And I'm not sure about whether potatoes grow well from seeds or not. I haven't really gotten a chance to try because it's so rare that I get to see the flowers or get to see what happens after that. But we could try it. I think it'd be fun to try. So, but yeah, Mara is from the cucumber family. It's not, I don't know if it's the cucumber itself, but it's the native cucumber around here, or the native member of that family. So, and I think sadly, because I didn't have enough pictures of Solanaceae, that's it for today on our quiz. Sorry, I didn't have enough pictures. But just to recap, our characteristics are that we have our 5 united sepals. Even if the tips are separate, then a lot of times the bottom of it at least is united, and sometimes the whole thing is. We have our 5 united petals, and the shapes vary a lot, not consistent. We usually have our 5 stamens, and our pistils often will have a 2-chambered ovary. Not always though, like when you begin to cut into tomatoes, it gets a bit complicated. It doesn't always have that. I recommend as homework, if anybody wants to, and this might take a few, I don't know, months to do, but next time you get a tomato, cut it open a couple of different ways and see how many chambers are inside, just to see if it matches the pattern or if it differs. I wonder, I don't know about how wild tomatoes would do, but also remember that if they're cultivated, it's likely that we've wrought some changes on them too. So that might be interesting just to play with and just to notice. And again, lots and lots of alkaloids. It's a very poisonous family, so be careful when handling them, touching them, and definitely eating them. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. So with that, we can go on to any questions or sharing as people would like. And there we go.